Hello, amigas, and welcome to Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast. Okay, how exciting it is to have another beautiful soul here, but she's special because it's her second time around here on the podcast, and I'm so excited to hear a lot from her because guess what, amigas? Last time we were talking about mezcal, but now we're going to be talking about books. And so this is so beautiful. This is like a full circle moment for me because she was considering writing a book. She was in the middle, but wasn't complete in finishing up at that time. But let me say a little bit about her. She's an incredible woman. And she's an attorney. She's been practicing law now for how many years, Adriana?
A little bit over 13 now.
Yes. So as you know, once you pass the 10-year mark, you're a senior attorney. But she's a trailblazer, amigas. So her name is Adriana Palomares, and this is her second time here. And we'll touch upon a little bit about the prior podcast. But today we're going to focus on the fact that she wrote this beautiful book called Brava, a Latina lawyer's path to empowerment, which is up our alley because we're both first gens and we're both Latinas and we're both lawyers, and there's so much to unpack here. Pero amiga, welcome to Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast, Adriana.
Oh my goodness, Jackie, yes. What a full circle moment for me as well. I remember when we met for the first time and I was very excited, and now I see what wonderful things you're doing and how much your podcast has grown, and I'm so happy and proud of you. And I just want to say thank you for not giving up and keeping steady and creating this space because it's so necessary. So thank you. I know it's a lot of work, and being a full-time lawyer, I know how hard it is to, do everything. So thank you so much for creating the space and for having me.
Oh, amiga. The pleasure is all mine because it's so much joy to do this. And as you know, going to court is very different than coming on a podcast because, it's not like it's work. It's not. It's just talking así como amigas, like meeting up, having a cup of coffee, having a glass of wine or tequila or mezcal or whatever,
Yes.
And so we do that on a personal level. But here's the thing, amigas out there who are listening. So I want to go back to where we left off because we all know that the time that on the podcast we were talking about you were in the middle of working with a mezcaleria and that you had this ambition of creating a company female-owned from beginning to end in mezcal. And so I really want to bring us back a little over there so that we can give a little bit more perspective on here on Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast. So tell us, since our last conversation, what has happened in that regard?
Wow. Yeah, it seems ages ago, but that is still very much a dream of mine. I haven't given up on that idea. Obviously, a lot of things happen in between. But what we did manage to do is we brought Mezcal La Chica Loca to the States. And that was, I believe, 2022. We launched it here. And, it's one of my dear brands because, I worked closely with a team that was just very, very just passionate about this project. And the brand itself, La Chica Loca, is such a fun name, but it's also, it speaks to like women, right? And so we did launch that brand here in the States, and that took up a lot of my time and work. We launched it at the LA Tequila Fest in 2022 and managed to get into the US market. So that was a huge accomplishment. And of course, after that, I decided that I needed to really focus on writing the book. And as an author yourself, you know that is very time consuming. And this book was something that I didn't want to postpone any longer. I think it carries a message that I really wanted to make sure first gen Latinx heard it. And so it was really just burning inside me that I had to finish this project. And so I paused the mezcal for a little bit, and I focused most of 2023, if not all of it, in just finally getting this book published. And I got it published towards the end of the year in October of 2023. But, looking forward to really following up again on the mezcal. I'm still involved with Chica Loca, and it is still my dream to create that women-owned mezcal and continue to do that. Yes, it's
and
fun.
That you just tell me when the opportunity arises, because I told you from the beginning, I'm like,
I know
that is something that I would like to be an investor in. So definitely.
Absolutely.
And for amigas out there, just that I'll be pitching that across this platform and all my social media once that does happen. But today we get to enjoy Adriana on a very, very specialized thing, which is the art of writing a book. Yes. And as she was saying, it is time consuming, amigas. Yes. And especially if you're still practicing law. So how did that, walk us through that, because I gave up practicing law, and therefore I was able to do all these other things, right? But you are still practicing. So how was that? Writing, practicing law, and you had to, you put the pause on the mezcal, but you're still practicing law. So what did you do in terms of time management and when you started writing this book?
You know what? Obviously, when you put your heart and soul into a project, you have to make sacrifices, as you know. The sacrifice is different for everybody. And, when the year started in 2023, I was working full-time. Actually part-time, but it felt like full-time. There's no such thing as part-time in the law, as you know.
Who are we kidding?
Right. So, I thought that by taking on a part-time role, I'd be able to have extra time to dedicate to the book. And while, it wasn't as crazy as working full-time, I felt that by the end of the day, I just was drained, and, creatively, I wasn't there, and, it was just robbing me of so much of my creative energy. And so I made the very tough choice to take a break. It wasn't a long break, but nevertheless, it was about, I want to say a 3-month break. So in April of last year, I left the practice. But what I did from January to March of 2023, I did this very intense routine that I actually got from another book, and I can't remember the title of it right now, but that book basically encourages people who are working on a project, or just in general who want to be better at accomplishing projects or doing things. It encourages you to wake up early and get everything done by 8 a.m., which sounds very crazy, and it is crazy and intense, but it worked for me. So during that period, I was waking up, at 5 a.m., and from 5 to 8, I was dedicating time to my book and to me. I was meditating, and I was doing a short, 30-minute workout, and then I'd get to writing. And by 9 o'clock, I was on my computer doing my legal work. But of course, that was 3 months, and I got the manuscript completed. And that's when I submitted it to my editor. That took about a month to come back. So by the end of April, when I had the manuscript, I realized it still needed a lot of work. And so,
amigas out there, okay, it's not just as you write the book and they're gonna edit and it's okay, and it's
no,
it's a Word doc and everything's gonna be corrected. No.
It's
edit upon edit upon edit, and have other people review it, because of course 2 eyes are not as good as 5 eyes. And it's the craziest thing, right?
It is very crazy, and I thought when I submitted that manuscript, I thought, okay, I feel really good about it. Obviously there were areas where I told my editor, this is where I don't feel very strongly, but I wasn't expecting that he was going to come back and say, hey, you need to do your chapter 1 all over again. And I was like, oh my God, but I really like my intro. And he's like, I get it, but that sounds like it could be another type of chapter further in the book. So, just to be able to hear the truth was very hard. So I knew I needed to put more time into this. So that's when I made the choice to quit my job. And I took 3 full months off where I just dedicated my time to the book full time. And so, yeah, by midsummer, I got, the manuscript to the level where it needed to be. And that's when the rest started happening, the production process. Writing a book is also in stages. So once you have the manuscript and the edits done and everything, then you got to think about the production. And so that kind of led me through the fall when I started, the rest of the production process. So
oh my God.
It was a lot of work.
Yes. But you did it. You did it, amiga. And I'm so proud of you. And I really want to get into the book because I have the sense and the feeling that while the book is written in a third person writing, I really believe a lot of it has to do with your story, your personal story. So I want to know, how truthful is that? Like, is Lucia you? Lucia,
I knew you'd ask that question. Lucia is definitely the main character. Jackie, the book is actually a fictional, inspirational novel. That's how I classify it, because there is information in there, obviously, that is true. This is fictional. The characters are made up. However, I can tell you that my story and the story of other first generation Latina lawyers and professionals really inspired me. In fact, I like to look at this as a tapestry of stories from other Latinas that I interviewed in the process. Some of those were shared stories that they shared with me, and obviously, I got permission to share some of those. So I feel like Lucia's journey is really a tapestry of the experiences of different first generation Latinx lawyers and professionals who, have faced similar challenges.
Yes. When you say tapestry of these lawyers, I totally relate. But in the beginning, oh my God, I'm like, it was so powerful. I thought, wow, whoa, what? Amigas, I'm not gonna disclose very much, but I will disclose to the point that the situation is something that has happened to women in Mexico. That se roban. Los hombres roban a las mujeres. And I remember my grandmother telling me about that.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I remember my mom saying that the whole reason that her parents let her go to the United States is because someone was intending to steal her. Wow. So that chapter, I'm like, holy moly, guacamole! Like this is not an isolated event. This is something that has been happening to a lot of women in Mexico. And maybe if you could touch upon that, so that I don't disclose it, but you can, kind of give us a little 411.
Absolutely. The reason why I started the book with this topic, of mujeres robadas, is because I realized that a lot of us are the product. We are the ripple effect of those mujeres who didn't have a voz or voto as to who they were going to marry. And we are the product of that. And, I, like you, when I first heard about this, I thought, oh my God, that's horrible. And I realized then that actually it happened to a lot of my friends' abuelas, my friends' tias, my friends' moms. And I just thought, you know what? How come nobody ever says anything about that? And maybe we know it, but we don't talk about it. And then we don't talk about how powerful that is, in terms of where we're at now. We've come a long way to be able to just decide who we date and who we don't date. That's huge, Huge. And so for me, it just, it meant so much to be able to explore the story of our ancestors and how they paved, whether their experiences were painful or not, or great or not, this is where we come from. This is something that we have to grapple with and understand, so that we can understand our journeys and where we're going.
Right, exactly. Because it is a ripple effect, right? I mean, because our DNA is carried by prior generations prior to us, right? All the mujeres robadas are in our bodies. Those cells are in our bodies. And it's so beautiful how you show the story of Lucia and the information that she receives from her relatives as to this very issue, but then even in other issues across this book. And the fact that as kids, like our age, well, I'm older than you, but those that were either born in the United States or came to this country early on as a young child, we are not privy to those that information, right? We just live. And so you think in your little brain that everything's okay, but you have no idea what happened to get to the point that they're in. And this kind of leads me to the fact that in immigration, I started, when I was reading the part in your book about the buildings being done halfway, like it was like the second floor wasn't done, just the first floor was done. And then that like makes complete sense, because there was a rush into the United States during the whole amnesty program, and even before then. And so I could see how the laws of the United States affected Mexicanos, those that stayed back and those that promised to go back. And you talk about that. And rather than me speak upon my experience in immigration law, practicing law in that realm, why don't you tell me what you saw and how your book encapsulates that entire movement?
I'm glad that you noticed that, and it means a lot, because that was a very powerful chapter for me to write. And like you said, it's crazy how the laws shaped our future. Had Lucia's father not been deprived of returning to Mexico, maybe she would have never migrated, right? But yet, because these laws came about, there were choices, or there were not choices, but they were decisions that families had to make. And this changed the trajectory of their lives. And we are a product of that change. And so, again, for me, it was about exploring how and why, our journeys became what they did, not only so that we understand who we are, but that we also go back and give our ancestors the credit they deserve, but also know how to handle the traumas that we deal with as first-gen professionals, right?
Yes.
So
the oh my God. I mean, we can spend chapters on imposter syndrome, and we can spend chapters on, not seeing people look like us, and how challenging that was to be amongst other races and communities and not really knowing the language, learning the language as you were going to school. It's very challenging. And then when you get to the whole law school thing, oh my Lord, that's a whole nother chapter.
Absolutely. And a whole nother challenge. And
so here, we talk about being displaced and people being left behind because of the law. Now you're here in the States with your family and going into another institution besides UCLA, but now you're going into the law where you're like in the middle with the top 1%ers in terms of education and career. And you walk us through it a little bit in the novel, but does your personal experience mirror the one that is talked about in the book?
I think to a certain extent, obviously, and I'm sure you as a first generation lawyer also could relate to that, because I think it's a very similar experience. There's a lot of loneliness. You said it, there's imposter syndrome. There's a lot of loss. There's a lot of questioning that goes on. There's a lot of just feeling like maybe you don't belong. And so I know those feelings were very, were shared by my peers, in my entering class. I don't know, you as a lawyer know that back in the day, we still are short on diversity. We're not as diversified as we should be. But back then it was even worse. I was one of 5 Latinx students in my class. And so you realize that we're all feeling the same way. And at first it's hard to talk about it because you think maybe it's just me, and I don't want to be vulnerable because I don't want people to think that I'm scared. Because, like you said, this is the top 1%. This is my competition. And in the law in general, vulnerability is not looked upon well.
No, not in law, but it's like people hire you to win.
Yeah.
End of story.
Do what you got to do. Yes.
Do what you got to do. I'm paying you to do it, so you better win.
Yeah.
So there's no opportunity or room to be vulnerable and to shy away. And so it's very challenging, especially if your nature isn't to challenge. Because I found myself like my true essence in nature is more of that flow, the femininity, which is nothing in the law. It's so masculine driven. Oh my God. But here's the thing, amigas. This is such a beautiful book to show you that, hey, it's okay to be vulnerable. And I'm so proud that you actually really shared so much vulnerability in your book. And you're practicing law, and maybe your clients how's that? Have your clients read your book? Because that's also like, ¿qué dirán?
Right. I don't believe, I haven't had any clients say, hey, I read your book. Obviously people in my firm have, and I overall have had a really good response. And I think it's because Brava, it's about being brava. It's about being courageous. Not only in, being vulnerable, but in really owning that those challenges that we overcome as women, as first-gen lawyers, as first-gen professionals, and using that as fuel to say, hey, I've got what it takes to do what I need to do. And so I personally started, I think you and I maybe talked about this at one point, how hard it is to be a lawyer when you like to be in peace and harmony. Because I'm like you, I think when I was younger, I had that, hardcore passion for being the best advocate, and I really fight for your client. And of course that's very necessary, and that's something that we need to have as lawyers. But I also think that empathy can take us a long way. And I think the law and the legal system needs to be more empathetic. People get hung up on their egos, and that just ends up either delaying things or making things more difficult than they should be. At the end of the day, we're dealing with people's real lives. These are real issues, and if we forget about our humanity and their humanity, it just makes it so much harder. So I think it definitely also brought a shift in the way that I practice law. I am gearing more towards being, obviously I will always be an advocate first and make sure that the interests of my clients are respected, and that they get the best outcome. But I also shoot for making sure that I don't pick unnecessary fights, that I don't, create more drama or unnecessary fights than there need to be. Whereas, a lot of lawyers like to do that. They like to, delay and, just they forget. They've become so detached from the human aspect that they forget that these are human lives, and it doesn't benefit anybody if we just prolong things.
Yeah, no, it's so true. So true. I think that it's unfortunate that that humility and compassion is not taught in law school.
Correct.
All it's taught is to win at whatever cost. And I know that we take the MCLE, which is the what is it, the what's it called, the ethics and the ethics requirement, and I'm like, all I have to do is ace the exam. That doesn't mean that I'm ethical.
Correct.
But there should be a way that we get to be ethical and teach ethical ways. I know there's classes, but it's like, es como chiquilladas. Es como si fuera like a misnomer. It doesn't matter. It's like whatever.
Yeah. It's
right?
just like another box that you check.
Another box to check, right? And there has to be more of an importance about humanity, and the law shouldn't be so rigid. I mean, obviously we have exceptions to certain laws, but life is not black and white. Usually it's gray. Absolutely. It's gray. And so we get to teach people about, what humanity should stand for, which is love, principally love. Let's respect one another and love. And together we can be courageous. And so with that in mind, amiga, tell us what one big point you want the reader to gather from your book.
Oh my goodness. So one of the things that I want the reader to know is that this is not a book just for lawyers or people who want to become lawyers. I chose to tell the book from the perspective of a first-generation Latina lawyer because I could relate to the story, and because the book itself, and the background that I did in creating this book came from interviews that I did with other Latina lawyers as well. But I think the book, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, and if not, you can tell me, but I think the book really is meant to be for anybody who is a first-generation American. It doesn't matter where your ancestors came from. I think the struggle is very much similar. The struggles are similar if we came to this country, whether ourselves first generation or second. The struggles are very, very similar and very real. And another thing I want the reader to know is that this is not a book about reaching the American dream and it ends. This book is about going beyond that and really exploring where you come from, who your ancestors were, so that you can learn, or at least initiate, to heal your trauma, to become a better version of yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like a self-help book in a way. It's just intertwined in a story,
Right. No, I noticed that. I was like, oh, I like this. Oh, I'm so happy to hear this, Adriana. Well, amiga, I know we're heading towards the end of our interview here, but before I let you go, I'd love for you to share 1 or 2 tips on how an amiga can handle her shit. What say you? Oh
my God. All right. First, stay truthful to your dreams. Don't ignore them. Don't feel bad about them. If they're big, better. So don't, just acknowledge your dreams. And the second thing is, it is never too late to start making those dreams a reality. Yeah. So handle it, do what you gotta do. Sacrifice looks different for everybody, but figure it out. Because I think Jackie and I are examples of mujeres that had this dream. And despite the fact that we're, attorneys and we have our full-time jobs, we did not give up on our dreams, and look at us,
Yes, we're here.
Look at us. So don't give up. Handle your shit. You can do it.
Shit. Yes. Yes. Oh my God. Exactly. Stay truthful to your dreams. It's a very important thing. I think sometimes as women, we just don't. We start making excuses, and it's important not to. I mean, I know that life gets in the way, But it's so important to just, okay, let's pause and really think about it. Hey, whatever happened to that idea I had? And then if it keeps on happening, then that means something is brewing in you. Start it. Maybe it's just a communication with someone who does that kind of work.
Absolutely.
You just never know, right?
Yeah, and I think that if it comes to your mind and if it comes to your heart, it's because it's meant to be explored at a minimum.
Right, exactly. I'm so grateful that you're here, Adriana, and I wish you the best of luck. So where could we find the book? And where can we find you?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram with the handle at Latina Legal Tales. And in there, you'll find a link to my website. You'll find a link to my publisher's website where you can buy the book. You can also buy the book on my website, which is www.latinalegaltales.com. And it is also available on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And at the Libros in Lincoln Heights, if you want to go in person and buy your own copy.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, Amiga, it's 333, and I'm so excited because that means the angels are here with us. Yes, right?
Yes, I agree.
Thank you so much, Amiga, for being here on Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast.
Thank you, Jackie. It's such a pleasure to see you.
Oh, likewise, my friend.
Thank you for the space.
Yes, absolutely.
I send you a big hug.
Ay, también abrazos, cariño. We'll soon see each other.
Yes, let's do that. Alrighty.